What's going on? This is TJ Murphy, and welcome to another episode of Adventurous Entrepreneurs. My guest today is Jason Yarusi. Jason went from broke, working as a bartender in New York City, to becoming a private fund manager of over $245 million of multifamily real estate. Since 2017, his company, Yarusi Holdings, has amassed over 2,300 units of apartments. He's an avid ultra runner and workout enthusiast. He also hosts the Multifamily Live Podcast and runs Figure Multifamily Mastermind. He wakes up at 4:32 a.m. every single day. And there's a serious principle in here which can unlock some true potential when you listen into this episode. Beyond real estate, Jason spends his time with his wife, Pili, and 3 young kiddos, Luke, Lily, and Leo, and they all live in Tennessee, where they're living a very intentional, adventure-filled life together. Just a few of the golden takeaways Jason shares in this episode are the Live 100 lifestyle, embracing change, building momentum, and leading a life of impact. Lessons from starting a multi-million-dollar real estate investing business, and how to leverage the 4-3-2 principle to transform early hours into energy and achievement. So, without further ado, this is me and Jason Yarusi. Welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Murphy. Since quitting my corporate 9-to-5 and starting a business while backpacking through Asia back in early 2017, I've had the privilege of learning from some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs. Through these conversations and my own journey, I've learned that much like in life, entrepreneurship is an adventure. On this podcast, I explore the journeys of top-performing leaders in their fields. These wide-ranging conversations include tactical business advice, how I built this insights, lessons in leadership, life hacks, travel stories, favorite hobbies, and insights into living a purposeful and joy-filled life. Adventures await us, so let's dive in. Hey, what's up, Jason? Welcome to Adventurous Entrepreneurs.
Hey, TJ, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dude, it's a pleasure to have you here. So I wanted to start off with something just to kind of break the ice here, but I understand you're an avid ultra runner, and having just finished my first marathon last year, learned a lot through that process myself. Maybe I'll get a ultra in someday. But how has your passion for running influenced your approach to business and personal challenges?
Sure. Well, I'll turn it back on you. What'd you learn?
Man, so the commitment, like getting up every morning. I trained in the winter here in Bend, so running in the snow, running in the rain, running in the bitter cold, and just sucking it up every day and getting out there and getting after it, especially on the longer runs, was not always fun. But I had a vision for what I wanted to accomplish in terms of getting my time, and I put in the work to do it day in and day out. So just the consistency, it helped just sharpen that axe, and that translates to everything. So
I was just going to say, it sounds a lot like goal setting and then actually going through the process of actually achieving the goal through the ups and downs that you go after, right? And so a lot with myself and running is that I don't necessarily have this like affinity for running. I just run, right? Just something I do in my process, and it's become part of my pattern. And I had bad patterns, bad habits for a lot of times. And then I had to pivot years ago into better habits. And part of this became just a daily regimen that I do. A lot of that includes running, right? And so that just became something of a pattern where the result ended up being worse if I didn't do it, right? It made me feel worse, where in the beginning it felt worse doing it, right? And so I had that part of just building it into my life, and now it's part of my life, right? That working out, the commitment in the morning, now that's what I do, right? So if I don't do that, it throws me off my path for the rest of the day. So the pain that I get from not doing it has now transitioned to be the front runner of what is actually the process of my day.
Yeah, isn't that an interesting experience? I've gone through that transformation myself. I never was a morning person. I would sleep in, especially like in college years. Man, I'd sleep in all day if I could. But over time, have developed the habit. I get up at 5 a.m. and first thing I'm going out, especially on Tuesdays and Thursdays, is my day. I go out and work out with a group of guys, rain or shine, hot or cold. We're out there at 5:30 a.m. sharp, grinding it out in the gloom and showing up consistently, putting in that kind of work. Man, it just sets the stage. There's nothing else that's going to be harder than that I'll face in the day, because we get some brutal workouts in. So when I don't do it, when I'm sick or if I am lazy and skip a day, I feel it later, just like you described. Like things are harder. I'm not in as clear of a mind. I don't have the same energy. So for me, it's building up that habit to the point where, yeah, it feels better to do it than not do it. Love that you shared that.
It sets the stage for your day, right? And what I found is that, myself, I wasn't a morning person either, because many years, right? Actually, Pili, who my wife, who you met just right at the beginning of this podcast, we met back in New York City. We were both working at bartenders, right? So our night would go to sometimes like 6 a.m., right? So like we would have these nights that would just like never end, right? And as we transitioned, moved out of New York City and started having a family, right? There was that point where you can't sleep in. It's not like, hey, we'll get you when you're ready, little guy, right? We had to start making changes if we wanted to get back control of our day, right? And so getting up early became very important because it allowed me to take back control. Because many times in life, like myself and others, like you get up into chaos, right? And then your day is chaos. If you get up late, right, and then you eat something poor, and then you rush out the door, you stub your toe, right? You're late to work, as you're going to work, you're stuck in traffic. Then you get to work, it's one fire after the next, right? And then your day just repeats like that for years, weeks, decades, right? Who knows? But when you start to take back that moment in the morning where you can just reset, take control, go out there and get recharged, go out there and put the energy and focus on yourself. And I started doing this, getting up at 4:32 a.m. So 4, 3, 2, 1, go, right? I just started getting out of bed, going right with my day and doing that, right? So I'd get up, have a glass of water, make coffee, in the meantime, go meditate, and then just get to work out, right? And so by the time I was done with that, I had created enough control in my day that the rest of the day I could be ready when something came out of whack or something was on fire, right? Instead of the moment of getting up being chaos into more chaos, I now had set the stage that I had at least taken control of starting the day right. And when you do that repetitively, it starts to create a pattern that starts to build momentum.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Your inputs influence your outputs, and chaos will only create more chaos. So having that regimen, and you don't have to get up at 4:32 a.m. That may not be for everybody, but starting small and committing to something, and then having that integrity for yourself to show up each and every day. You're going to skip a day sometimes, you're going to fall off, but get back on the horse, because building up that habit has a compound effect into everything else that you touch in life and will make it better. So love it. Give us a little context on your story, man. Can you share a bit about your journey from, early days of your career to now becoming a multifamily real estate investor and the founder of Yarusi Holdings?
Yeah. So as mentioned, I met Pili working in New York City, and for many years I was just on the wrong side of just not having direction, right? So I worked in bars, worked in restaurants, and then had just a number of life events come up that I had to make a choice, right? So I had some poor things happen. And it was the choice of either just keeping with this part where things weren't going right, and I was either going to be satisfied with things not going right, or I was going to start making changes, right? So I started making changes, and that at first led to me, I opened and sold a brewery. Then I opened a restaurant and bar. And then eventually, 2010, 11, Hurricane Sandy happened in New Jersey. And that decimated hundreds of thousands of homes up and down the East Coast. And my dad has this unique business where he lifts and moves houses, right? So he'd actually take the house off the foundation, move it, lift it, a number of other things. Well, his business would do like 10 or 12 jobs a year with just work, but the work many times could be for foundation issues, but also could be for flooding issues. And so all these hundreds of thousands of homes get targeted and hit by the storm. And overnight, my dad's company goes from 10 calls a month to 1,000 calls a day. So my little brother's working for me, Pili, who's my girlfriend at the time, myself, we move out to New Jersey, start helping dad with the family business. So we took that business over the course of the next couple of years from those 10 to 12 jobs to about 250 to 300 jobs a year. So just massive growth. But at the same time, I was constantly on this runway where I was doing jobs that were very task oriented. I couldn't pull myself back, right? So you think about the bar world. If you're not serving a drink, you're not going to tip, right? If you don't just show up, right? Same thing with the construction world. It was such a niche business where it was so demanding because my brother, my dad, myself, we had the experience and we couldn't fill our roles, or we couldn't sub it out or put other people in this position to do these roles because one, it was a very expensive business in terms of, we're lifting someone's highest and best thing, right? Their house, right? So it was something we had to care about, but the risk level was so high. So I constantly had to work. And if I didn't work, of course, there's no revenue. So I kept asking what would be something else that could help us get back our time. So we did what we thought was logical. Pili, she was pregnant with our first kid at the time, and she went out there and got a real estate license, and then we started flipping houses, right? So we started doing these very extensive flips. What we quickly found out is now we're very busy with this construction company, and now we're double busy now because we're so active in these flips that are there in New Jersey. So we did fine with that, but we kept asking the question, like, what else is there? And that led us into finding other things like Airbnbs and wholesaling. But again, all these active businesses. Came upon someone who was investing in out-of-state rentals. And that was that first moment I said, interesting. So we brought a couple of properties, a smaller 2 and 3 families that were out in Indiana. And lo and behold, it forced us to set up teams, put people into place to go out there and put them in the position to be able to help the investment forward while we weren't active in the work. That started creating revenue. And we saw that as just like the light bulb moment of saying, well, however, it wasn't scalable. To have like 50 duplexes all around town just seemed like a logistical nightmare. So I kept asking that question again, what else is there? Came up on a podcast just like this, where someone was talking about buying large apartment buildings. And that was that moment when I said, I get it. I get the point of the economies of scale. So we sold off the small properties, went all into buying large apartment buildings. And back in 2017, we purchased our first one, which is a 94 unit. That was in Louisville, Kentucky. And since then, we've done probably about 29, 30 transactions, a little over 3,000 units down here in the Southeast.
Way to go, man. That's awesome. What was helpful for you in starting the path down real estate and getting into especially the multifamily space? Like, what was that podcast you mentioned? Were there any tools or resources? How did you figure everything out and teach yourself this craft from ground zero? You literally knew nothing.
That's a fantastic question. Usually we want the perfect thing to show up, right? And people said, if you go back, would you just not do the flip and not do the whole stuff? No, I did it, because what it did is it taught me a lot of things about where I wanted to go and what I didn't want to do. Yeah. And many times we're looking for that perfect thing. And real estate's this like wide, massive blue ocean. You can do tax liens, you can do wholesaling, you can do just a trillion things in real estate, but you got to pick one. Most people who are very successful are in one category. They're not across the 19 different spectrums of real estate. Yeah. So you have to pick one. But the advantage here is that, well, which one is the right one? Well, you don't know. You don't know what you're going to like, and you don't know what you want to do.
They're all going to be right for different people, depending on what your setup is and what your tolerance is for risk and being involved. Yeah. So
you can find ways to get yourself active. It could be, going in there and helping someone who's doing a flip, right? Partnering with someone, just getting exposure to one part of real estate. Because usually 3 things will happen. We'll be like, okay, I don't like this at all. Okay, so stop doing it and do another part of real estate. Or 2, I want to learn more about this, right? Or 3, it's exactly what I want to do. Right. And so if you have that, it gives you the opportunity to get to the next question, right? And that next question is like, is this going to be valuable for me to learn more about? But most times we sit in the sidelines saying, hey, I just want to find the perfect thing. Right. And then when you start it and you actually go try it, like I knew someone who waited 3 years learning all about flipping to finally get started. And within a month, he's like, I absolutely despise this because I hate working with contractors. But you think about it, like if he had just gone back and like that first year, went out there and just went on the job site with someone, just tagged along with someone, he could have gotten exposure to this and found out that this wasn't the right avenue for him and moved into something else. So for this, with real estate, it goes that you really do want to get honed in on what you want and then be very good at putting the blinders on. So when I talk about what we're investing in, still to today, we're very cut and dry about what we want. So our target market at that time was Louisville, Kentucky, and we looked for 75 to 150 units that were built between 1970 and 2000. That were garden-style apartment communities that were in the south side of Louisville, Kentucky, because that's where a lot of the workforce housing is. So it helped me, one, dictate anything of what came to me. So if someone, I have a 12-unit apartment building, no. I have a new construction apartment building, no. I have something on the east side of Louisville, no. I have a 94-unit apartment building on the south side of Louisville that was built in 1975, yes. So it made me get very detailed about what I want, but it also allowed me to understand the variables of just that type of building. Right. So it got me very conditioned to what I was looking for. And then I was very quick to be able to react when I found it. So the response usually comes back, well, doesn't that eliminate leads from you? No, it eliminates me wasting a lot of time, because if all those other assets come back, then I have to learn how they all operate. And if it's in other parts of town or other parts of the country, you have to learn all those different areas, because where you live and I live right now, 2 different economies, 2 different markets, 2 different sides of the street, 2 different school zones, like everything changes, all these variables. And so the more you can limit the variables, the more successful you can be in one particular asset and the class you're actually going after.
I love that. There's a lot of really good golden nuggets in there, but like having that clear buy box, I mean, that principle can apply to any area of business. But for you, having that clarity around what that ideal purchase looked like allowed you to leverage your time in the most effective and purposeful way. You weren't chasing down leads that weren't within that buy box, because that would have been a waste of time. You would have had to learn all these different areas and what that market variability looked like. But having that clarity, I'm sure you were able to say, check, 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 boom, let's go check this thing out. And if it looks like a good deal, you move forward from there. So
we'll also raise a lot of investor capital. And where this helps is like, could you imagine, like, if today I was like, hey, I have this apartment building, right? And then the next time I come to you, I'm going after a car wash, and the next time I'm going after, an Airbnb in Costa Rica, you would be so confused, right? Because you wouldn't know what I was doing. The model would be confused, and you would say no, right? So ideally, we help investors learn if this would be the right opportunity for them, and what exactly we do, and it become conditioned to the model. So it's not something of having to be excited for the wrong stage.
Yeah, you got to hone in and become a master of your craft and get started. You mentioned a person that you knew that waited 3 years. I know from doing my own research into real estate, I haven't jumped in, hasn't been the priority yet, but a lot of people talk about people that are just paralysis by analysis. They're watching all these YouTube videos, they're listening to podcasts for years and years and years to learn how to be an expert, but theory and theoretical knowledge is nothing unless you get that real world experience and figure out what you actually do have, interest in, tolerance for, and see if you can actually stomach what comes from doing a flip or investing in a multifamily or doing short-term rental, whatever the case may be. So learn, of course, educate yourself, but you got to get started.
Yeah, we can't blind ourselves that that's action, right? Because it's learning, but in some part, like the learning cycle never ends. But ideally, like I can read all I want about riding a bike, but until I just get on the bike, right, then I'm not actually going to feel the experience get going. Right now, do I have to say go be risky? No, that's not what we're saying. But getting out there to be active, with other people that are doing these projects, at least get you in the room to see how things are operating, right? Because it's usually you can get all the big pieces, but it's the little pieces in between that help you get out of the gate that missed a lot in the big conversations.
Good stuff. So what's the focus today? We're here in February, end of February 2024. What has your focus right now? Where are you spending your time and energy?
We spend a lot of time still in our core principles. We focus on one deal a quarter from the real estate space. And we can't control the outcome, but we focus on the key performance indicators to do that work. So that would mean so many outreach, to have so many opportunities come in front of us, so many deals that we will underwrite. And on that fact, so many offers we will made to hopefully find ourselves into commitment. So with that would lead us to about 4 properties that we would buy a year. Now, it's never perfect. 1 year we might buy 1 in the first quarter, 2 in the second quarter, none in the third quarter, and 2 in the fourth quarter. And then the following year it might be 1, and then 0 and 1, right? So, but we put the energy into what we can control, and that usually gets us. So that's going to continue to be our focus as we grow here, just from the Yarusi Holdings company. On the other side, I launched the Live 100 podcast. It's on peak performance, helping people level up, really just to meet a lot of conditions to get from where they are to where they want to be. And that's been awesome. We've been out a couple months here with Live 100. It's been really cool to just see the feedback and the approach is getting out to more people.
Yeah, I love the energy behind it. I did research in preparation for this conversation, so checked out the podcast. And you talk about the 100-mile mindset and the 4-3-2 principle, which you alluded to earlier. Can you explain those concepts and how they've impacted your success in business and life?
Yeah. 432 just came up for a part is that, and bunch, you want to get up earlier, right? So I'll just get up at 5:30 or 5 or 5:15, but nothing's concrete. You're not setting the stage for that point. And like, 5:15 can become 5:20, which becomes 5:45, becomes 6 o'clock, right? You just are, and you're already failing yourself out of the gate, right? Because that first thing, if you think that first decision of the day is you just failing, right? You just not putting yourself to the test to get out of bed, right? Well, that sets the stage of how you react going through the rest of the day. So getting back to 432, I said 432, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And I'll just stand up and get out of bed. Because once you're out of bed, you're out of bed. Once you get out of bed and you get moving, you're not going back. It's that moment of thought where our mind just gives us the day off right in the beginning. And we say, I can just sleep 10 more minutes. But then that's how you treat the rest of the day, right? And your results become that you'll put off the hard things. And the hard things are short-lived, right? Those moments are just getting up, you're up, right? But that moment of decision is the hard moment. But it's short-lived, right? The second you get up and you're good to go. And that's many times with the challenges we have to face is that they're short-lived. But if we can just power through them, that's the other side of the results. And we get stuck in this same old, especially as, you think about your life, right? From being a little kid to going to middle school to high school, even to college, like you had structure, you had order. And then we get out into the world where there's no structure and no order, and we're on ourselves to make the decision. So we give ourselves so many days off. And then we're upset that the results don't dictate what we want in our mind, but we haven't shown up to do the steps to actually get us to those results. And so getting up at 4:32, it started setting me to the stage to say, okay, I'm going to push through. And I started running each and every day just because that was a pattern that started to give me predictability to my day. Because when I had my first 100-mile race, I had no idea how to train to it. Like a marathon, there is some kind of like marathon training courses, like you do like a 6-week, 12-week, 18-week, you pick, right? And typically push you to a spot that a couple weeks before the race, you'll run a couple 20-mile races, right? Or, 22, 20 miles just to condition your body. But I was looking here that I'm not going to run 2 80-mile races, going up to a 100-mile race. It just sound crazy. So I said, I don't know how to prepare for this. So I'm just going to run 6 miles every day. So I'll run 6 miles every day, no matter what, whether it's cold, whether it's hot, whether my ankle hurt, whether my ear hurt, whether I didn't feel good, just do it every single day, no matter what. And what that allowed me to do is condition my mind that time is not going to be perfect for me, but I had to get up and do it regardless. So when I got into this race, I said, okay, I don't know how to run 100 miles. So if in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I have to only run 100 miles. Just like most, it would scare me back from the ledge, right? It would be like I'm stepping off this 10-story building. So I said, I do know how to run 6 miles. I've done that repeatedly, and I've done a lot of marathons and everything else. So why don't I just run 6 miles and run to the aid station and drink station, and we'll just figure it out, right? So I did that. Okay, cool, here. Well, I'll just run to the next one, right? So another 6 miles. Let me just do that. Okay, let me just run to this next one. And now it might be that let me just run another 3 miles to the bridge, and let me just run another 500 feet to the tree. And every time my mind said, you know what, man, this might be too much. Well, let me just run to that next spot out there. Let me just run another 1,000 feet, and then I'll see how I feel, right? And that next spot, I'll be like, okay, good. Like, let me just run to this next piece, right? Let me run to the tunnel. You do that, I run to the next aid station, run to the next bridge, run to the next part. And each time my mind gave me this hesitation, I'd say, okay, that's good. I understand, but let me just get to that next point. I'll see if I want to stop then. Lo and behold, you do this, right? And I look back and I'm at 100 miles accomplished by a lot of 6-mile runs. So the 100-mile mindset is that you have this whole course of your life where you have goals ahead of you. And we spend so much time focused on the goals. We spend so much time focused on the result, but it's all the time on the journey. Everything about it, right? From starting a business, from working at a company, from having a family, right? That's the journey, right? The goal could be have a bigger house. Great. But that's the event. You can't control the event when it shows up. What you can control is the actions you take along the road. And if you're not liking what you're doing for that journey, it's not going to be easy, but you have to say, you have to understand that you're doing this because this is going to be your life. And many times we're building just for these mile marker goals, but the goals are just a point that you hit. Like, oh, I want to make $1 million. Well, what happens when you make $1 million? Like, life doesn't stop. So who do you become then? Oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. Like, you see people fail at weight loss so much because they focus on hitting a number, right? I want to lose 30 pounds, but they forget to understand who they need to become as that person. So they get to that 30-pound mark and they don't know what to do, right? It's like, I don't know what to do in my life, right? Because now I've lost this 30 pounds, but I don't know how to be that person. So the quickly got to build it back on because they've only built this diet that's crashed them to where it is, but they don't have sustainability to keep them there. So as we look at our goals, we have to understand who is that person I'm looking out to be, right? When I get to that person, like, what is that person going to be? Like, what that result? Like, who is future Jason? And when I can look at future Jason, like, who does future Jason hang around with? Like, how does he talk? How does he think about things? How does he look at the world? Because many times we're trying to get to the $1 million without becoming the person that is that person who has $1 million.
Man, impactful stuff. I love the fact that you way you broke that down, success at the end of the day, we're always going to have more goals. There's always going to be another benchmark to chase, another milepost to reach. But the way you described that just now, the work that comes in, the mental fortitude, the toughness, the skills, the consistency, and the habits that you build up in reaching that goal, that is what allows you to take that and move on to whatever comes next. Whatever preparation you just put in to be able to accomplish X goal is what's going to allow you to 10X that in the future. And success is often a subjective term. Everybody's going to have a different, whether it's good and productive for them or not, definition of success. So how do you personally measure that for yourself, and how has, that perspective influenced your approach to to business and how you approach deals?
It's a lot changing with the mind, right? Because we can have two different people look at the same thing, and one have a good perspective and another have a bad perspective. Yeah. And so a lot of me with success has been ideally just forming my mind in a way that I start to have a better relationship, not only with myself, but just with the world itself, right? And so in our impact acts, it seems nonsensical, but I came from a world where I had a lot of anger built up, right? And so when you look at that world, everything is angry, right? Everything is something that you don't want, right? So my success now, as I look at it, is that you look at a world in a different view. But it doesn't get easier. Like each and every day you wake up. You had a great day yesterday. Well, today starts and your mind might say, you know what? I feel like being horrible. So you have to reset your mind each and every day to just look at it from a different view, right? So when I look at success today, I want to make sure I put my kids in the right perspective here, that I'm not going to control their outcome, but I can give them good values. I can give them good feedback. I can give them good knowledge, good learning experiences, so that they'll be in a position to go and make great choices. Because I can't control what their future can be, but I can hopefully set the stage for them to be in a position to make great choices when they have obstacles come up or they have great opportunities come up in front of them. And that looks like success, because I spent a lot of years just in a world of just not making good choices, right? And with that leads to failure, it leads to unhappiness, it leads to, regret. But the time is always on our side when we choose to have time on our side. Because most will say, my parents were divorced, right? I didn't have good money habits, where, we came from a family that, doesn't have good genetics, or, we came from an area that was poor, right? There's all these reasons why I can't. But if you look at all the opportunities you have, right, you start to understand how grateful you can be for what you have and how you have all the opportunity you need. But it just starts with you believing in you. Nobody believes in me. Well, why should people believe in you if you haven't done anything? But why does it matter anyway? You have to believe in yourself, because they can or can't believe in you. If they believed in you, would that make you go out there and succeed? Well, if you're not taking action, no, it wouldn't. But what it would make you do is that understand that regardless of what people think, you have to start believing in yourself and start talking to yourself, right? I read something the other day that said, no one is going to talk to you more in this world than you talk to yourself. So be kind to yourself. Because most of us talk in patterns and ways to ourselves that you would never say to anybody else, right? You would never say to anybody else. There's nobody out there you would say the things that you say to, like, I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, like I'll never think how, we say all these awful things to ourselves that we never say to anybody else, but we treat ourselves in that pattern. And we wonder why we don't feel good. We don't feel good in our relationships. We don't feel good in our body. We don't feel good with the things we're doing. It all starts with us and the inputs we have coming in, as you alluded to earlier. And when we get the better inputs, what happens? Well, things magically start to turn in our favor. Yeah. Not because anything changed, minus we just started putting good energy into ourselves. And so our energy going out, right? You can see it. Like when someone has bad energy, it's very impactful on others around it. But if someone has good energy, it has that same effect in the opposite. So if you can do that in your pattern, think about how you will bring back and manifest into the world.
I love that. So you talk about trying to instill these principles for your kids. Obviously, none of us can affect what life's going to throw at our children, but the values and the principles and the preparation that we can give them ahead of that is what we can control. So I would imagine there's a lot of crossover from what you coach with your clients, and especially I want to dig into the Live 100 principles. Can you talk a little bit about what those are, how you coach people on that, and maybe even examples of how you're bringing that into conversations with your children?
So 40 to 85% of our day is built on habits. Yeah. And if you think about that, 40 to 85% of your day, let's just take 40, right? Like 40% of your day is habits. And if you think that you have a lot of bad habits, so 40% of your day is bad habits that you repeat day in, day out. So if that is your case, right, that 40% of your day is bad habits, think about how much good you have to do to follow that just to get back to zero. Let's not even talk about like to get past it to have a good day. Like how many good things you have to do to compound over the bad that's just happened, right? And so a lot with Live 100 is through 3 foundational blocks: breaking your bad habits to build your future momentum so you can magnify your success. And the break block is very important because you have to be self-aware for who you are, right? So you position yourself for greatness so you can go out there and own your future, right? And if we're not self-aware with who we are, right? Just to be real, with who we are, right? Okay. So right now I'm in a position, I'm working as a factory worker at Amazon. I'm just not happy with my life. I understand that I don't have the resources to go out there and have the freedom to even take time off, right? Or I'm unhappy just with my relationships because I'm bringing that negativity in there because I'm always worried about money and it's affecting how I look at it, right? And I don't have time for my kids. So you need to be self-aware with exactly what's wrong, what you don't like about you, so we can change, right? Many times we want to gloss over and push it down the road and blame somebody else for a problem. We need to take responsibility, and I talk a lot is that we worked at a really busy bar in New York City. And the bar was so busy that the night would end, and because it was this crazy outdoor place, there was like never a quarters because it would end at all different times of night, 3, 4, 5 p.m. So there would just be bottles everywhere, and the owner was always scattering to find people to just kind of like pick up bottles, right? So could never have it. It was always a mess. The next day we would go, well, one night this guy, John, walks out and says, hey, listen, I'll come pick up all these bottles for you. On me, I'll just do it every night. And the guy was like, the owner was like, really? No way. Okay. And thinking the guy would never show up again. Well, next night the guy shows up, starts picking up bottles, putting them in the cases, putting on the boxes, taking them away and doing this. Does it the next night, right? Lo and behold, he becomes the guy. His name becomes Bottle John. He starts doing this, right? And that bar, which was this little outdoor bar, grows so big. At the time I was there, the revenue grew 25 times. And the bar itself sold the most Coronas in the world over time. Wow. Compared to any other bar in the world in 3 months. That's how busy it was in New York City. So this guy, John, who just comes out, starts helping this thing, starts to go where he starts to have, him. Now he has more people and more people and more people working with him, helping you do this because he was taking us to the recycling plant, making money. Yeah. Well, what was never relayed in the beginning is John was a homeless person and he didn't know it. And John was looking for a way out, and he was self-aware of where he was, but he wasn't ready to settle for his position.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I now had left that bar and moved on to other things. I'm sitting in the subway and I'm just sitting there, dark subway. If you've ever been in the subway in New York City, it's hot, it's disgusting, right? And you're down there in the middle of summer and I'm just sitting there like waiting for the train. I see this immaculately dressed person just walking down, like just dressed to the nines, like just looked fantastic. And what caught my eyes, I looked up and it was Bottle John. And John had go so far to pull himself out, to get off the street, that he was able to go and reconcile with his family to purchase and get an apartment up in upper New York, right? And taking himself off the streets by just being self-aware and not settling for where he was, but just starting to position himself for greatness by taking little actions that in the beginning, he didn't know that was going to be the transformative process, that bar was going to grow that much. He just knew it was something that he could do repetitively to go and help. And so he put himself in a position to win by taking back control of his life. And when we do that, life starts to happen for us instead of to us. Because he was no longer going to settle that I was a homeless guy. He could just said, hey, out there first day, hey, could you just help me with something to eat? But no, he came out there and didn't ask for anything. He said, I'll provide value to you. And when you start doing that in your life, like, what do you think happens? Well, a lot. You just don't know what it is until it comes.
Living life on purpose is what I call that. So that's actually a great segue here, Jason. This is a podcast about entrepreneurship, but one of the biggest hurdles that we all face, whether we're in business or not, is how to live a fully optimized life for what we care about most. Some people call that well-rounded. Some people hate the idea of balance and being well-rounded. But, from my experience, truly realizing this boils down to the intentionality that you just talked about, and designing your work life around the freedom and the lifestyle that you truly want to live, what I call living life on purpose. So what does that look like for you and your family? And, how do you make time for the things that matter most to you and the people that you care about most?
Yeah, and choice, right? We talked earlier about how I was in jobs that were controlling my day, right? Controlling my time and doing the efforts that we have now, right? I have 3 little kids, they're 5, 7, and 9. Each day I take them to school. I go to their events. I can leave school I can leave work because school's right down the street. I go to their little events during the day. I was just there for Valentine's Day the other day, right? Yes. I now can choose my day, right? And that gets you back to the life you want, right? When you can choose your day. And it was a lot of wrong moves to get to the right moves to understand what I wanted. And now the predictability can be that, we've been able to build a great company that has great people around us that help support us here, right, as we go forward at Yarusi Holdings, but it allows us to choose back to take our control when we want. And that's been the most part, is that I didn't want to live the life. I saw my dad, no one worked hard on my dad. but he was never home because he constantly had to be out there working, right? So I would go, I remember years, I don't even know if I saw him, right? Because out before I was up, back after I was asleep, right? And if you look at that point, he tried his best and really worked hard, but I wanted to be sure I was present. And so I made a big part here where I would put myself in position to go out there and be present. But what that's forced me to do is be very intentional with the time I have when I am here, right? So I like working. It's not that I don't like working. Like I like doing the work. I like what I do. But when I'm here, I'm very intentional to get the work done. It needs to be important to drive the business forward instead of having time to waste.
Yeah. All intentionality at the end of the day, man. Way to unlock that for yourself and take control of your life. So in the spirit of the title of this podcast, Adventurous Entrepreneurs, I have a choose your own adventure question for you. So you can pick which one you want to answer or both if you so desire. But first is, what's a favorite place you visited in the past 5 years? Could be a trip you took with your friends, family, or second to that, what's just a recent adventure you went on? Could have been something grand and an exotic, or just an adventure in your own backyard. And in either case, give us the story. What was it like? What made it so memorable?
I mean, traveling with kids is always an adventure. I'm blessed enough that my wife was born and raised in Hawaii. So one of the greatest points is actually being able to go with the family and going out there to see family. But one point is I'd never been to Kauai, so we actually just went to Kauai last trip out there, and it was amazing. And she actually has aunties and uncles on all the islands, and they'd always come over to either the Big Island or to Oahu. So in this part, I was fortunate enough to be able to go out there and see the family and see that island. It was just a great trip. The kids love it when they're there. Just little water babies, and so they're always in the water. But that's always amazing.
What was your favorite thing that you guys did while you're in Kauai?
It's not always the result. It's just time that you can reset, right? And you get out there just for a moment and you just see things differently, right? I think many times that you get out there and we're here, I'm used from a pattern of just moving so fast. And what's always fun about Hawaii is I can get up very early. Sometimes I'll get up like 2 a.m. and go work for 4 or 5 hours because everybody here is on regular time in Central Time or even on Eastern Time. And then by the time that everybody's starting to get up and get going with their day, here, everything's slowed down. So I can now have the whole day just to be with family, just to be with everybody there and my kids without having interruption, which is a lot of fun.
That's a great feeling, man. Thank you for sharing that. So before we go, for people listening who might feel stuck, unsure about what they should do next, what's my next step, what advice would you give them to start down the journey of controlling their intentionality and their habits and leading to a more successful, productive life?
I'm going to say something so simple. Whatever comes to your mind right now, go do it. And you're stuck because it's in your mind. There is no stuck, but action breeds more action, and action always gets you in action, right? So if you don't do anything, you're not going to get anything. That's just, we already have that figured out, right? But if you take action, like I alluded to earlier, you either get one of three things. One, you absolutely hate the direction, so you turn around. Two, you're either somewhere kind of going in a direction that makes sense, so you need to pivot. Or three, you're on the right step, right? Yeah. But it's never been a point. Every time I look for the answers, I never found the answer. But every time I understood that I didn't know the right question, then I understood if I could find the right question, I would get the answers I want. So you go out there and you take action to learn better questions so you get better answers. And those better answers lead you to better results. But if you're going to sit here and say, I'm stuck, I need an answer, well, you're not getting the answer because you don't know what you're looking for. But you do need to get out of the gate, just take action, go try something. It can be anything. Go take something completely outside your comfort zone or break your mode. And I promise you, you will find the energy to keep moving.
Yep. Just do it. Go take action. Awesome, man. Where can people find and support you online, website, socials, things like that?
Sure. Yeah. So Instagram, Jason Yarusi, Yarusi, or go over to the Live 100 podcast with Jason Yarusi.
Perfect, man. We'll put links to everything in the show notes. Awesome. Thank you. This has been action-packed, super valuable. So I'm going to have fun rewatching and coming up with the show notes for everybody. But any parting words before we go?
I appreciate what you're doing. It's always good to get out there and have the right energy to get in front of people and just help people forward, man. So thanks for having me on.
Amen to that, brother. Appreciate you. To all of our adventurous listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share this on social media or with someone you know will get some value from it. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping people find the show, and I personally appreciate reading them when they come in. So please go drop one if you have the time. We'll see you all next week, and remember, Whether we're talking about business or the things that bring us joy outside of work, life is meant for exploring. So go out there and live it one adventure at a time.